Sarah Miller had always believed she was finally stepping into the kind of life she had worked so hard to earn. At 24, she was fresh out of nursing school, now employed at St. Mary's Hospital in the small town where she had grown up. Her days were exhausting, her nights irregular, but she found comfort in the fact that she never had to come home to an empty house. John Carter, her boyfriend of 3 years, lived with her. He wasn't ambitious the way Sarah was, but he was dependable, warm, and endlessly patient. He worked nights at a supermarket across town, stacking shelves and driving deliveries. It wasn't glamorous, but Sarah didn't care. In her heart, they were as good as married. Their home was a modest one-story house tucked into the edge of a quiet suburban neighborhood. During the day, sunlight streamed in through the windows and warmed the pale wooden floors. At night, the house seemed to shrink into itself, leaving Sarah alone with the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old beams. She had grown used to it. John often teased her about being nervous when she was alone. "Don't worry," he would say with that crooked grin. "No matter what happens, I'll always come back to you." It had sounded romantic at the time, but on one particular night, those words began to echo with a different weight. "No, handalni, andeshadi handawa." The night was cold and damp, the kind of night that pressed fog against the windows and made streetlights glow like weak lanterns in a storm. John left for work late, muttering about losing track of time. Sarah leaned on the doorframe as he pulled on his jacket. "You're tired," she said. "You should have taken the earlier shift. This road is awful at night." John kissed her on the forehead, brushing away her concern. "I'll be fine. Get some rest. I'll see you in the morning." The door clicked shut behind him. John's car, a faded silver sedan, hummed down the narrow 2-lane road that cut through the wooded outskirts of town. The wipers squealed against the windshield as drizzle turned to heavier rain. He tapped his fingers against the steering wheel, humming along to a tune on the radio to keep himself awake. Then something moved. It was quick, darting across the road, a dark figure, human-like but indistinct in the fog. John's heart lurched. He swerved sharply, tires screaming on the slick asphalt. The headlights swung across the trees. The impact came with a violent crunch of metal against wood. Glass exploded. His head slammed forward. For a moment, the world was only the sound of rain and the faint hiss of the dying radio. And then, silence. Wow. At home, Sarah had already changed into her pajamas and curled up on the couch with a medical journal. She was trying to force her tired brain to review a chapter on emergency procedures. The house was quiet, except for the steady ticking of the clock above the TV. Her eyelids were heavy when a sound jolted her back to awareness. Clack, dot. It was the sound of the front door unlocking. Sarah blinked, confused. She hadn't heard a car pull up. She was certain she had locked the door earlier. Slowly, she set her book aside and stood. The hallway stretched dark before her. She padded forward, every step reluctant. And then she saw him. John stood in the open doorway. For a second, Sarah's relief flooded her, but almost instantly it was replaced with dread. His clothes were torn, soaked in something dark. His skin was pale, his lips split and bloodied. Raindrops clung to his hair, and his eyes seemed dull, as though the spark she knew so well had been dimmed. "John!" she gasped, rushing forward. Oh my God, what happened? He stared at her blankly before offering a strange, stilted answer. I fell. Just wanted to come home. His voice was flat, detached. Sarah wrapped her arm around him, guiding him inside. You're hurt. You need to go to the hospital. But John didn't resist, didn't explain. He allowed her to pull him inside, peel off his wet clothes, and hand him a clean shirt and sweatpants. His movements were stiff, almost mechanical. When he was dressed, he didn't head to bed or even the bathroom. He simply walked into the living room, sat heavily on the couch, and turned on the television. The screen buzzed with static. Sarah frowned. The cable must be out again. But John didn't change the channel. He didn't even blink. He stared at the white noise as though it were a program only he could see. The air in the room grew colder. Sarah tugged her sweater tighter around herself and rubbed her arms. She could see her breath misting in the air, though the heater hummed softly in the background. She sat beside John cautiously. John, are you sure you're okay? You're scaring me. No answer. Only the faint rise and fall of his chest, as though each breath was an effort. Then he made a noise. A low, guttural rasp. Dot. It wasn't a cough. It wasn't even human. Sarah's skin prickled. Her eyes darted to the TV screen again. For a split second, she thought she saw his reflection in the static. His face twisted into an impossible grin, eyes hollow and black. She blinked, and it was gone. Her throat tightened. John, she whispered. He turned his head toward her, but his lips never moved. His eyes seemed to smile, though his face remained expressionless. Fear washed through her chest. She rose quickly, muttering, I'll get you some water. The phone rang. Its shrill tone shattered the suffocating silence. Sarah jumped, clutching her chest. She hurried to the kitchen, snatched the receiver, and pressed it to her ear. Miss Miller, a man's voice said. This is Officer Daniels with the county police. I'm afraid I have some bad news. Your boyfriend, John Carter, was in an accident tonight. His car hit a tree. He didn't make it. His body has been transferred to St. Mary's Hospital morgue. Sarah's vision blurred. The phone slipped against her cheek. What? She breathed. Her eyes slowly turned toward the living room doorway. Through the gap, she could see John, still sitting on the couch, still staring at the static screen. He was smiling. The voice on the phone repeated her name, but Sarah barely heard it. Her hands trembled as she lowered the receiver. Her knees buckled, and she staggered back against the wall. The realization crashed down on her. Whatever was in her living room, it wasn't John. Her heart hammered so loudly it drowned out the ticking clock. She locked herself in the bedroom, every nerve screaming with panic. She pressed her ear to the door, but no sound came from the living room, only silence. After what felt like an eternity, she gathered the courage to peek out. The couch was empty. The TV was off. John was gone. Sarah's entire body shook as she grabbed her car keys. She had to get to the hospital. She had to see for herself. And yet, even as she stepped into the night, she swore she could still hear his voice, faint and lingering in her ear. Didn't I tell you? No matter what happens, I'll always come back to you. The night air outside was damp and heavy, clinging to Sarah's skin as she rushed to her car. Her hands shook so badly she dropped her keys twice before sliding into the driver's seat. The streets were nearly empty. The only sound was the engine's steady rumble and the thud of her heartbeat echoing in her ears. Every shadow along the roadside seemed to move, stretching and shifting in the dim glow of the headlights. Her breath came in shallow gasps. She gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. He's gone, she told herself. That wasn't him. It couldn't have been him. But the memory of John's pale smile in the glow of the TV gnawed at her. The way the air had chilled, the guttural noise from his throat, the impossible reflection in the screen. Sarah blinked hard, trying to focus on the road. That was when she saw it. A figure. Someone was standing at the roadside, barely visible in the fog. At first, she thought it might be a lost traveler. Against her better judgment, she slowed the car. The headlights slid over the figure, revealing the face. Her blood ran cold. It was John. His skin was gray and torn. Blood streaked down his temple and soaked his shirt. His mouth twisted into something between a grimace and a smile. His hand lifted weakly, beckoning her. Sarah. His voice rasped, cracked, and inhuman. Help me. Take me home. Sarah screamed, stomping on the accelerator. The car roared forward, but the voice didn't fade. It grew louder. It surrounded her. Sarah. Sarah, help me. She clutched the wheel, tears blurring her vision. But the voice pressed on, now inside the car itself, as though John sat beside her, behind her, everywhere at once. Sarah, I'm cold. Sarah, don't leave me. Sarah. Her sobs turned to gasps as panic overtook her. She swerved, tires screeching. The headlights caught the silver curve of the guardrail too late. Crash! Metal shrieked. Glass shattered. The world spun. Darkness swallowed everything. Sarah woke to the beeping of monitors. The antiseptic sting of a hospital ward filled her nose. Her head throbbed, her body bruised. Beside her bed sat Officer Daniels, the same voice she had heard on the phone. His uniform looked too sharp for such a weary face. You're safe now, he said softly. You were lucky. A passerby found you early this morning. Sarah's lips trembled. It wasn't luck. John, he came back. He was here. He was in my house, in my car. Her voice broke. Daniels frowned, his brow creasing with the restrained patience of a man used to grief. Miss Miller, I know this is hard, but John died in that accident. Sometimes the mind plays tricks when... No, Sarah snapped, tears streaking down her face. I saw him. I heard him. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't my imagination. Her hands shook as she clutched at the sheets. Daniels didn't argue further. Instead, after a moment's silence, he said gently, "Would you like to see him? Sometimes." The corridors of the hospital seemed colder than usual as Sarah followed Daniels into the basement level. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting shadows that stretched too far. A coroner pulled back the sheet. There lay John. His skin was pale, his body broken yet unmistakably lifeless. His eyes were closed, his mouth slack. The stillness of him was worse than any horror she had seen. Sarah crumpled against the gurney, sobbing. She reached for his hand, but it was icy and stiff beneath her touch. There was no warmth left in him. For the first time since the nightmare began, she believed, truly believed, that he was gone. Nay, oh. That night, Sarah returned to her empty house. She was too numb to notice the shadows clinging heavier to the corners, too exhausted to care that the ticking of the clock seemed slightly off, too slow. She collapsed into bed, her mind replaying the image of John's face in the morgue. At midnight, the clock struck 12. Knock, 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 knock. Her eyes shot open. She lay frozen, the blankets pulled tight to her chin, her ears strained in the silence. Then came the voice, a whisper, raspy and hollow, seeping through the door like smoke. Sarah. Her heart hammered. Sarah, open the door. Help me. Tears welled in her eyes. She clamped her hands over her mouth to keep from screaming. The voice grew stronger, more insistent, more desperate. Didn't I tell you? No matter what happens, I'll always come back to you. The knocking resumed, slow and deliberate, echoing through the empty house. Knock, knock, knock. Sarah slid off the bed, her legs trembling as she crept toward the door. Each step felt like a choice she couldn't undo. Her hand hovered over the knob. The air was freezing, each breath clouding before her lips. On the other side, the voice whispered again, so close she could almost feel his lips at her ear. Sarah! She shut her eyes, tears streaming down her face. And the house went silent. Nada.